All right, let's just jump right into this explainer and unpack a universal, highly relatable, and honestly, kind of pathetic human experience. We're going to explore the actual neuroscience behind meticulously rehearsing a conversation in your head, only for it to completely derail the absolute second it happens in real life. You know the exact scenario, right? You're standing in the shower putting on an absolute masterclass in debate, delivering the perfect, devastating comeback to your boss literally 3 days after the actual conversation happened. Your delivery is flawless, but then reality hits. So let's look at why our brains insist on doing this to us.
We're kicking things off with this brutally honest Reddit post from the No Stupid Questions forum. Mostly because it instantly validates that we all spend exhausting amounts of time drafting scripts for conversations that will frankly never, ever exist. The user here points out that they imagine what they'd say, how the other person would respond, mapping out every possible argument and explanation, and while sometimes it kind of feels like a useful preparation tool, other times it's just incredibly tiring.
So the absolutely crucial question we have to ask here is, why do we write scripts we never use? Like, why does the human brain waste so much metabolic energy and processing power acting like an overly ambitious Hollywood movie director for social interactions that are, in reality, purely unscripted improv shows? Well, it turns out cognitive neuroscience actually has a fascinating multi-layered explanation for this whole phenomenon, and it involves some heavy lifting neural architecture. When we're mentally arguing in the shower, we aren't just giving simple internal monologues. Researchers actually distinguish between different varieties of inner speech. On one hand, you have monologic inner speech, which is really just you talking to yourself from a single perspective. But what we're doing during these intense mental rehearsals is staging complex dialogic inner speech. This is where your brain basically stages a full two-person play. You literally hallucinate the other person's perspective, their snarky tone, their eye roll, their pushback, all securely inside your own skull. To actually pull off this internal dialogue, we have to borrow tools from our social cognition network, specifically using something called theory of mind. This is our ability to attribute mental states like beliefs, intents, and emotions to other people. We heavily rely on regions in the brain that act like our ultimate empathy engines. They're designed to represent what we think their intentions and counter-arguments are going to be. So we're essentially booting up a ghostly simulation of the other person right there in our head. I absolutely love this analogy. To pull off these utterly useless predictive dialogue simulations, your brain essentially hires a ridiculously complex film crew. Your default mode network and theory of mind act as the screenwriters. The basal ganglia acts as your casting director, or, well, more like a nightclub bouncer. And your internal forward models, they're the special effects team. Let's break this production studio down a bit so we can see exactly how much effort is being completely wasted here.
First up, we have the screenwriters. Your brain's default mode network works in tandem with those theory of mind regions to set the scene. They pull from your autobiographical memories, past interactions, context, things you know about the person, and they use all of that to generate a flexible, open-ended script. They are desperately combing through your memories just to perfectly craft that one witty, devastating rebuttal that'll make you sound like an absolute genius.
Now your basal ganglia steps in as the ultimate neural nightclub bouncer. In any given millisecond, your brain is actually generating dozens of potentially terrible things you could say. This go-no-go gating system basically stands at the door to your working memory, making the split-second decision about which of these embarrassing, fake conversational threads gets the VIP green light to actually play out in your conscious mind.
Then, the special effects team takes over for some anticipatory speech planning. Your brain uses internal forward models to predict the exact physical consequences of your planned speech. It literally simulates what it's going to feel like in your mouth and what it will sound like in your ears to deliver that mic drop comeback, generating the entire sensation before you even part your lips. And these mental special effects are so incredibly vivid that they actually fool your own body. As psychological research points out, what's really fascinating here is that these imagined conversations often evoke genuine emotional reactions. Because your brain is running a full simulation, your body physically responds. You might feel real anxiety, real frustration, or even relief. Your heart rate might literally spike, with your body completely ignoring the fact that you're just sitting alone in sweatpants fighting a phantom.
But wait, this brings up a genuinely terrifying thought. With all of this neural machinery firing, the motor preparation, the sensory simulation, the intense emotions, what exactly stops us from accidentally screaming our rehearsed comebacks out loud on a crowded subway, right? If we're assembling the precise motor commands to speak, why aren't we actually speaking?
This brings us to the dual stream prediction model and the existence of a massive, active motor mute button. Your frontal cortex assembles the speech, your parietal lobe predicts how it will feel, but right before execution, bam, motor inhibition kicks in. The execution is entirely stopped. It's a completely automatic mute button for your brain.
So the really cool takeaway here is that covert speech, your internal monologue, is actually just inhibited overt speech. Psychologists suggest that as kids, we start by talking to ourselves out loud. It's called private egocentric speech. But over time, as our inhibitory control develops, we learn to internalize it. We develop the ability to intentionally yet completely automatically withhold the physical motor response of speaking. We essentially learn to hit the mute button, trapping the argument safely inside our own heads.
But here is the tragic punchline of all this effort. Why does reality ruin everything? Why does your carefully crafted script always fail? Well, first, your internal forward models predict auditory consequences based entirely on your brain's assumptions. But real life introduces an unpredictable, live human being who gives unexpected auditory feedback. Instantly, your parietal temporal connectivity detects a massive conflict between your prediction and reality. The resulting error signal is so huge that your carefully rehearsed prefrontal rehearsal loop is immediately shattered. Your brain just short circuits, completely drops the script, and frantically scrambles to improvise. And this perfectly illustrates the ultimate hilarious paradox of the human brain. On one hand, we possess this massive expectation, a flawless, award-winning neural architecture, basal ganglia gating, cascaded dual-stream prediction, complex theory of mind, all working in perfect harmony to run a highly controlled simulation. But on the other hand, the reality? Pathetic human social awkwardness and immediate script abandonment the exact millisecond a real person goes off script and says something completely mundane like, "Hey, nice weather today," instead of the aggressive opener you prepared for.
Before we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final thought. Knowing that your brain's highly sophisticated predictive dialogue modeling is largely totally useless in actual reality, what perfectly crafted script is your internal monologue fruitlessly preparing right now? Are you rehearsing a brilliant, witty observation to leave in the comments? Just take a second to notice your own internal film crew at work, wasting precious energy on a conversation that might never happen. Anyway, thanks for joining me, and I'll catch you next time.